A gutsy comeback victory for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, but I guess that's just how their season has gone. As the Notre Dame Fighting Irish fall down 10-0 in this game, and they come back and they beat Penn State 27-24 on a walk-off field goal, not necessarily a walk-off, but a field goal with 8 seconds left by Mitch Jeter. If you guys are new around here, I'm Colin Bashnagel, your host here at Bash's College Football Show. You can find me over here on TikTok. Just look me up at Bash's CFP Show, or it's linked down in the description down below, especially for those of you on YouTube. If you're over there on Spotify, what is up? Come over and check out all of that stuff. YouTube, Bash's College Football Show. You can look it up. Make sure you subscribe. But certainly, before you do anything else, make sure you add me on Spotify over there. Let's start before I get too into the weeds with my opinions and takeaways of this game. I'm warm right now, sweating. This was a thrilling game, and there were times in the first half where I wasn't thinking that it was going to be thrilling. I thought Penn State was running away with it. Credit to the Notre Dame Fighting Irish for being able to pull this one off and come back and get that victory. So, Nicholas Singleton early on, was used rather often. They ended up getting him on a little bit of a slip screen on their first drive. They tried to get going with him in that first quarter. You could tell also in the first quarter that Jeremiah Love was not his normal self, did not have the same type of speed and stuff. But it seemed like the longer that Jeremiah Love played, the more comfortable he got. So maybe a lot of that had to do with some sort of fear, I guess, that he could have had. But I do know this. Abdul Carter was a nightmare for the quarterback run game all game long. I know a lot of you guys might have the perspective that it worked. I don't believe that it worked other than in a couple of moments. I thought it was good in short yardage, but generally speaking, Abdul Carter was really wrecking that stuff, especially when you would do that in a like a 1st and 10 type of situation there. Mitchell Evans was used very often. He ended up getting banged up, but Mitchell Evans was a kid that certainly got a lot of targets in this game, definitely a lot of love. No pun intended. He ended up not being the leading receiver because of what Jaden Greathouse was able to do. More on that in a little bit. But Mitch Evans, 5 for 58 yards in this ball game. He was beating A.J. Harris early on in man coverage. Now, A.J. Harris did get a big 3rd down stop on him later on in the drive. Definitely big there, though, for Notre Dame. For Notre Dame to be able to have that tight end threat out there. Here's also another thing that I definitely noticed in this game. Riley Leonard, he still has that same issue. Just because he hit a couple of longer passes in this game, when you look at that first interception to Zaki Wheatley, it was simply just him kind of little double clutch there, overthrowing the ball, a little bit of pressure kind of getting in his face. But generally speaking, it's the same problem that he's had when he takes those shots 20 yards down the field, those intermediate passes in particular. He a lot of times will overshoot them, undershoot them, lead them too far, throw it behind the receiver, just be inaccurate with that football. And that's what can lead to interceptions like that. And Zaki Wheatley gets the interception, and slowly but surely, Penn State goes. They drive down the field. They take the ball out of Drew Allar's hands here after this drive, though, because this drive got stopped by a Singleton drop, and he could have caught the ball. But it was a poor throw. It was an easy throw, and it was a poor throw by Drew Allar, and that set the tone for the night that Drew Allar was going to have, and it ended up making Penn State settle for the 3-0 lead. If they score a touchdown right there, that could have been the difference in the game for Penn State. But Drew Allar and Nick Singleton, they could not connect right there. J.D. Price really showed the first glimpse of hope against the run defense of Penn State. He cracked a run, and he was able to get some success there. And they ended up, moving a little bit down the field, got a 3rd down conversion on a QB run. And then I think their momentum kind of got stalled when Anthony Knapp got hurt, the freshman left tackle, ended up going out of the game. And that kind of tripped up their flow a little bit on the offensive side of the ball. They end up punting the ball back to Penn State, and it really never got better from there for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish in the first half. Katron Allen was, blasting off a long run. Nick Singleton was doing his thing, and then again, they in this drive they took the ball out of the hands of Mr. Drew Aller, and they decided to run the ball. They even took 2 snaps with Tyler Warren at Wildcat quarterback in this situation. Had a 12-yard run doing it, scrambled around when he was supposed to pass as well, and had a nasty stiff arm, by the way. It was pretty funny there to see. And they got to a 4th and 2, and they were setting up the run, and this is where they did trust Drew Aller to throw a screen pass. And, I'll get to Drew Aller in a second with his first half stats that were absolutely atrocious. He ended up completing that screen pass, converting a first down. Nick Singleton ends up cutting it back for a touchdown run to take the lead 10-0. But up to that point, Drew Aller was 5 of 13 in that game, but only 2 for 10 for non-screen passes. That is pathetically bad, what Drew Aller did in the first half. And that was his last pass, I believe, of the first half. And then in the ensuing possession, Riley Leonard gets hurt along with the right guard, Rocco Spindler. When Riley Leonard gets hurt, they had no momentum going on offense, and they have a little bit more of a pocket guy. And if you're looking at the future for Notre Dame and what this offense is going to look like next year, maybe Steve Angeli gives you a little bit of something there that you can be hopeful for. I know a lot of Notre Dame fans and a lot of other fans are more excited about CJ Carr. A lot of people would assume, just based on following recruiting, that CJ Carr would be the guy next year if they don't get a transfer quarterback. But I think a lot of us did forget that Steve Angeli is still there. He started for them in the bowl game, played pretty well, and he went 6 for 7 on that drive, led them down the field for a Mitch Jeter field goal that made it a 7-point game. That was massive to be able to flip momentum. And then they start with the ball in the second half. Leonard comes back in the game after that. Angeli, it would have been very easy and quick for them, the Notre Dame coaching staff, to make the decision to pull Riley Leonard and put Angeli back in the game. So Riley Leonard needed to make sure that he was playing his best half that he had played of the year. And though I don't think he played outstanding, I thought he played pretty dang well. Notre Dame starts pretty slow with a delay of game, but Jeremiah Love really got back going. I don't know if they gave him some sort of horse tranquilizer would not be the right thing at all. Some sort of, without going across YouTube guidelines, some sort of, assistance guarded by a needle or whatever. But regardless, it seemed like Jeremiah Love was a completely different person in the second half. Love getting going with consecutive carries and successful carries. And then after Love came out of the game, what I loved, no pun intended, was what Mike Denbrock was doing with the third-string scat running back, Aeneas Williams. Using him out of the backfield in the throw game, getting a downfield shot to him was excellent. Using him in the run game as well to set up a 1st and goal, that was excellent as well. And then it ended up leading to a Riley Leonard rushing touchdown to knot this game up at 10 apiece. Tempo for Penn State as they come back out trying to respond, it really backfired. Backfired in a major way. They were off the field in a heartbeat because they were trying to run tempo. And I thought that it was the wrong call by Andy Kotelnicki and that offense to go tempo at that moment, because the thing about tempo and going with that flow, if that's not your natural speed, if that is an option for you as an offense, then when you don't have momentum, going tempo when you didn't necessarily gain momentum on those plays, it's not going to help, right? So, for example, in the third quarter, they got, I think, a 22-yard pass to Tyler Warren. And then they went tempo right after that. That made sense But then when that tempo play only got a yard or whatever it ended up being, they went tempo again after they didn't have success. It's like, okay, no, collect yourself for a second. Try to gather the momentum here because you got into this situation. Don't go and rush and waste a down simply because you're trying to catch a defense off guard, especially when that defense is as well coached and experienced as that Notre Dame defense is, especially in the front. Notre Dame ended up having a 3-and-out. They were trading 3-and-outs. The tempo, again, backfired. I talked about that. And against blitz, Riley Leonard was able to find Jaden Greathouse one time before the touchdown towards the end of the third quarter to set up Notre Dame rather nicely. And Notre Dame entered the fourth quarter with momentum, kind of similar to how they entered the third quarter with a little bit of momentum. Jaden Thomas with a jet sweep on third and short in the red zone to set them up in the red zone, and then a big, crucial holding call on Kobe King to set up for on. By the way, it was on Eli Reardon to set up for a first and goal situation where Jeremiah Love ended up having like a real fight to the goal line. Super effort. Tremendous job by Jeremiah Love. Gives Notre Dame their first lead of the night in 17 straight points. Big play to Tyler Warren in the ensuing possession led to him being hurt, but I loved what Andy Kotelnicki was able to respond with, having creativity, getting ways to find a wide open Khalil Dinkins, and doing that through schematic ways. And I'm sure that play was probably designed for Tyler Warren, but they use Khalil Dinkins in that way. They're very confident in their tight ends, including their backups there. And then when they ended up moving the ball down the field following those couple of big plays, tough running by Katron Allen got them to first and goal, and who capped it off? Anybody but Nick Singleton. Patient runner, and he ends up getting in. I actually think the cutback was in, but whatever. Then this is the turns that this game took. 17-17 ensuing possession. Simulated pressure by Tom Allen absolutely fools Riley Leonard, and a little bit of pressure kind of makes him rush a decision, tries to fit it into a window that's not there. And denied Dennis Sutton gets the big interception for Penn State. If you are at Penn State at that point, you are starting to think, oh my gosh, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. And sure enough, it was looking like they were going to do it. A QB draw on a third down, setting up for a Drew Aller first down, and Katron Allen with an absolute crazy block type of winning plays that you want to see. A pass interference saved an interception by Jack Kaiser on that ensuing possession. I didn't necessarily love the call. I didn't think there was a ton of contact, and I thought the ball wasn't very well thrown. It was underthrown quite a bit, making Tyler Warren have to fight back towards the ball, causing the pass interference. I would have preferred, just based on the way they had called the game the whole time, letting them play, setting that precedent early. I would have preferred that they did not call that penalty. That's just my opinion right there. You can comment what you think of that, but yeah, I would have preferred if they did not call that pass interference right there, and they would have called that an interception. But off tackle in a split backfield, Nick Singleton punches it in for his third touchdown of the night. What a game by Nicholas Singleton, the absolute stud running back. Very, very fun to watch. After Singleton gets in there, the momentum is still on Penn State's side. Zane Durant blows up a run in the backfield of J.D. Price, and then Riley Leonard ends up extending a play on a crucial third down that flipped momentum back the other way and found Jaden Greathouse. Used Jaden Greathouse a lot there, set them up with a first down, getting closer to midfield, and then against man coverage, Jaden Greathouse makes his receiver fall down, or Cam Miller, the receiver, the DB. It is late. I'm pretty tired. I've been up since 4 a.m. Pardon me for any mistakes that I'm making over here. But Cam Miller, the DB, falls down. Jaden Greathouse takes it to the house, It is a touchdown to tie the game up at 24 apiece. Bryce Young, the true freshman, showed up in the ensuing possession, getting great pursuit, great coverage to get a stop for Notre Dame. And then Notre Dame gets that ball back. The quarterback run on third down got them their conversion, but they kept going. Who ended up taking the game over? Abdul Carter. Abdul Carter was the guy that took the game over. Now, I will say this. Abdul Carter had a sack that was negated by a hands to the face by Keziah Izzard. I believe, no, it might have been Zane Durant. Yeah, it was Zane Durant. I got it in my notes right here. Hands to the face, right? I don't necessarily have an issue with the hands to the face, but on that play, Abdul Carter got held. And the whole game, Abdul Carter was getting held like no other, and they were not calling it. They were not ever going to call it. So, I don't know. I just feel like you cannot be treating this kid completely unfairly, especially with a bum shoulder like that, and letting him get grabbed and held all day. And then when he fights through a hold, when coaches say a lot of times when they're getting held and the refs aren't calling it, the coaches will say, well, don't get held. Guess what Abdul Carter did? He didn't get held. He fought through a holding penalty, got the sack, and it got negated by hands to the face. It just sucks in that situation because I thought the refs should have been a little bit tighter with the holding that was happening on Abdul Carter in particular. They weren't doing it. They were letting the O-line problems that Notre Dame had not be as much of a weakness that it probably should have been. But even with that, he brought pressure along with a blitz from Zion Tracy, getting Riley Leonard out of the pocket, making him throw it away, causing a third down in which they had a three-man pressure where the two edge rushers, I believe it was Dennis Sutton and Carter, ended up making Riley Leonard step up right into the waiting arms of Keziah Izzard, forcing a punt, getting the ball back, and then Drew Aller did what Drew Aller does, throws it right to Christian Gray, held on to the ball way too long, threw it to a guy that was completely covered up in Amari Evans, tried to force it in there. It was not there. Drew Aller, his stats for tonight ends with 12 of 23. That includes a final completion, so he was 11 of 22, under 50% before that final completion. 12 for 23, 135 yards and an interception. You know who that looks like? That looks like Drew Aller anytime he plays a real defense. Anytime. I'm literally so worked up about this that my camera is shaking, so I apologize for this. He had America convinced after that Oregon game that he had turned a corner. Wow, their wide receivers are not that great, and he's still able to get the ball distributed to Tyler Warren and Dinkins and to the two running backs, Katron Allen and Nick Singleton had a big day, and he can occasionally hit Amari Evans. Did you know that Penn State wide receivers did not have a single reception in the game? You would think Benjamin Morrison was back for this one for Notre Dame, but he wasn't. He wasn't. So he throws the ball. Terrible selection here. And the worst thing about it, too, is the play call before that, they could have ran the clock down and went to overtime. And maybe the way Drew Aller was played, they probably should have done that. They probably should have just tried to tick down that clock because the first play that they ran was a counter led by Nolan Rucci. It was beautifully ran. Nolan Rucci had a beautiful block. It was a 12-yard pickup, I believe, for Nicholas Singleton, who just, again, had an incredible night for Penn State. And then the very next play, Drew Aller in the wide receivers as well, because I'm going to put part of the blame on the receivers not getting open, screws it up. And Notre Dame just pounds that ball, gets into comfortable field goal range, 41-yard kick. Mitch Jeter finishes it off. And, of course, the little lateral play at the end of course, the ball had to be in Drew Aller's hands. Nobody around Nicholas Singleton. I mean, I'm sure he didn't have room to score a touchdown, obviously, but nobody around Nicholas Singleton. And what does Drew Aller do? Albeit getting tackled, he throws the ball out of bounds. That is just the night that Drew Aller has had, and quite honestly, the career that Drew Aller has had against elite defenses. We thought that Oregon wasn't necessarily an elite defense, but a really good defense. And then we're realizing that any offense with competency has actually really been able to move the ball, because we figured out that Boise State on offense is really not all that good, though I thought they played decent against Penn State moving the ball, turned the ball over a couple of times. They were able to shut down Ashton Genty. Oregon had problems with that. Oregon had problems with Ohio State, not just in the Rose Bowl, but they had problems with them in Eugene. Ohio State was moving the ball up and down the field at will in Eugene. It's just Oregon was returning the favor as well. And Penn State was able to move the ball. So here we thought that Oregon was this, pretty solid defense, pretty good defense that Penn State was able to score 37 against. And, Penn State didn't necessarily play that bad. Like, they dominated on the line of scrimmage. Their running backs were amazing. Tyler Warren was amazing. Dinkins, when his number was called, he did a good job. Robertson, the tight end, I believe his name is Robertson. If I got that wrong, correct me. They stepped up. Those wide receivers are not good. And that quarterback cannot play in a big game. He just can't do it to save his life. The only big game that he ever showed up in is that Oregon game where all of their DBs are under 6 foot. So he got outplayed by a guy who really cannot throw the ball down the field. I think the grand takeaway from this ball game here is that whoever wins between Texas and Ohio State, those fans are going to be talking. They're going to feel like they already won the national championship, and Notre Dame's going to be a very tricky team. That defense is pretty solid for sure, but they did not play Matthew Golden and Silas Bolden and all the weapons that Texas has. They did not play Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Egbuka, Carnell Tate, Travion Henderson. They didn't play those guys tonight. I think that this Notre Dame defense is very, very, very good. I think they're a top 5 defense in America, at the minimum, a top 10 defense. But I am concerned about them actually playing Texas and Notre Dame. Now, I do think that if Texas were to upset Ohio State tomorrow, that would be a preferred matchup for Notre Dame for sure. But, there is familiarity there with this coaching staff, Al Golden and Marcus Freeman, having a game plan for that Ohio State offense because they faced them in the previous 2 years. But the issue with that is this Ohio State offense is definitely a decent bit different with the Chip Kelly identity that's added to it than they had been in those past 2 years. So the familiarity is going to be important to have for Notre Dame, but I still don't think they want to go up against that skill, and they don't want to go up against the combination of the scheme with Ryan Day and Chip Kelly. I think they'd rather play Texas because Texas's run game is so up and down, and I don't think that they're going to be able to get the run game going against Notre Dame unless their offensive line plays their best game of the year that they're capable of. I think Notre Dame is definitely going to be an underdog in the national championship game. I'll definitely save a lot of that preview there, but if you are a fan of one of those two teams, you win tomorrow. Don't get ahead of your britches there, okay? It's still a national championship game. This isn't going to be the TCU 65-7. I can promise you that. That defense is way too good, and that offense, that run game is way too good. They're going to be able to hang around in that game for a little bit, so don't get too comfortable if you win tomorrow. But if you're a Notre Dame fan, you don't want to take moral victories if they don't win the national championship. But if you're a Notre Dame fan, you got to tell me this. Like, even if they don't win the national championship, you got to be really happy with how the season has gone based on how it started, going down to Northern Illinois in week 2, losing to Northern Illinois in week 2. You got to be really happy with that. And as far as Penn State fans go, I know exactly what you're thinking. This happens to us every time. These late games, we're in this situation against a top 5 opponent. And by rankings, this is seeding, but by rankings, yes, this was a top 5 matchup. These top 5 opponents, James Franklin just can't get it done against top 10 teams. I know. And at some point, you got to show me. You got to show me that you can do it. I am the fool over here that thought they could do it. I think they should have done it. Drew Aller played the worst game that he has played all season, in my opinion. I think he even played worse tonight, than he did against Ohio State. I think that was a little bit of last year Drew Aller that we saw tonight. And bottom line is the kid's coming back. Penn State fans were falling in love with him. NFL fans were falling in love with him, loving his potential for NFL. And that talk's not going away. He's coming back to college. He's going to have another year to develop. That talk with a big kid like that, with a big arm, it's not going to go away. But you had college football fans thinking that Drew Aller was the best quarterback remaining. He wasn't even the best quarterback on the field. And I've been critical of Riley Leonard. As much as I love Riley Leonard, the leader, the football player, as far as just like I'm going to put my shoulder down and do whatever it takes for my team. And I love Riley Leonard, the person, as far as just the character that he at least shows from a public perspective. I admire that. But as a passer and as a quarterback, but specifically as a passer, I definitely have been very critical of him. He was more efficient and more effective than Drew Aller tonight. I was wrong. Notre Dame had the better quarterback. And that was the difference in the bowl game, was Notre Dame had the better quarterback. Thank you guys for tuning in here tonight. Really appreciate it. I'll be a lot more wired for sure for the Ohio State-Texas game. I'm definitely not going to have as much slip-ups. I am a big Ohio State fan, but I try to eliminate my fan takes, of course. But with those reactions, those live reactions, and I will be doing one tomorrow for Ohio State and Texas, I am going to be very, fanboy-ish in those type of situations, just like a lot of the reaction that I had in particular with Drew Aller and the anger I had there, right? A lot of that is just reactionary, loving the sport and being a fan of the sport. That's the type of content you're going to get with the lives. It's a little bit different than my normal recorded content, but if you like it, make sure you like it. That's all I got to say. Thank you guys for tuning in. Leave a like.